Good evening, or no, it's not evening. Oh my gosh, I am so used to doing these at night. This is a nice treat for me. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me for one of our Town Book Center story times. Today I've got Kevin Cornell with me. Kevin Cornell is the author and illustrator of Lucy Fell Down the Mountain, FSG books for young readers. He is known for his humor and has illustrated many books, websites, and comics such as The Chicken Squad, Count the Monkeys, The Terrible Two, and Mustache. He spends his time in Philadelphia drawing made-up things. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it, even though it's daytime and decidedly not nighttime.
My pleasure. I'm excited to be here, excited to tell my story.
Awesome. So, rather than have people listen to me blather on about all sorts of boring stuff, don't worry, kids, we'll have time for that at the end. Why don't I hush up and let you read the story for us?
All right, sounds good. Okay. Let me just grab the screen here. All right. All right, everyone. I'm going to tell you the story that I just recently finished called New in Town. So it will be a dramatic reading of New in Town. All right. One fine morning, the people of Puddle Trunk woke to find their bridge had collapsed again. Over the years, they'd lost many a bridge. Termites, sad to say, had destroyed them all. Luckily, Puddle Trunk could always build another, thanks to the bridge building expertise of local resident, the fabulous Mortimer Gulch. "Drat," said Mr. Gulch, studying the bridge's remains. "Termites again? Don't they know how expensive bridges are to build?" If termites did not, the people of Puddle Trunk surely did. Fortunately, Mr. Gulch was willing to accept jewelry and cash, even dip into the clock tower repair jar to fund his rebuild. Everyone was happy to donate, except the traveling clock repairman. "Come now, little fellow," urged Mr. Gulch. "Everyone else donates." "Then my donation," replied the repairman, "will be to fix your clock tower free of charge." This Mr. Gulch accepted with only minor complaint. The repairman was new in town after all, and did not know how things worked. And so construction began on Puddle Trunk Bridge number 272. Everything went especially fabulous. Mr. Gulch was an awe-inspiring orator, a master of motivational rhetoric, a legend in the annals of emergency bridge building. And the bridge was quite good too. Until, that is, the wood ran out. Thankfully, the resourceful Mr. Gulch did not lose heart. "The new fellow has plenty of wood," mused Mr. Gulch. "I shall borrow some of his." He paid call upon the repairman that very night. "New fellow," said Mr. Gulch, looking about the cluttered hotel room, "might you lend us a smidgen of your wood?" "Well, I'd rather not," the repairman replied. "I don't want it eaten by termites." "My dear boy," said Mr. Gulch, "I am a termite expert, and I assure you it will be safe in our bridge." "And I'm quite sure," replied the repairman, "it will be safer in my tower." Well, Mr. Gulch thought this reply quite ignorant. Towers, in fact, were just as delicious as bridges, perhaps even more so. Why, only a small amount of chewing could easily cause an entire tower to fall, crushing a half-finished bridge and waking an entire town with its ruckus. And that, just as Mr. Gulch predicted, is exactly what happened. Luckily, he was there to speak words of comfort to the angry townsfolk as they stumbled from their slumber. "Good people of Puddle Trunk," he exclaimed, "let us not be angry with the little fellow. He is new in town, after all, and does not know how things work. I'm sure, by way of apology, he's quite willing to contribute a sizable donation to Puddle Drunk Bridge number 273. That, replied the repairman, will be quite unnecessary. You see, Mr. Gulch, I've already built it. And my stars, it was true. The fallen tower now spanned both sides of the chasm and made for a magnificent bridge. So overjoyed were the folk of Puddle Trunk that they threw the grandest of grand openings. Everyone enjoyed themselves immensely, except Mr. Gulch, who fretted about how poorly made the bridge was, how he'd never used such a rickety thing, and how genuinely frightened he was to cross it. Nevertheless, he used it that night when he left town forever on urgent business. What a good sport! As for the repairman, well, there was still plenty in Puddle Trunk that needed fixing, so he decided to stay. And though he was new in town and did not know how things worked, as far as the folk of Puddle Trunk were concerned, that was something truly fabulous. There we go. Back to you, Drew.
What an incredible story. Actually, so first of all, I loved it. I loved the artwork in particular. I think that one of the best things about books, especially books that have drawings in them, is when the drawings tell a part of the story, and sort of looking at Mr. Gulch and immediately kind of going, that guy's going to be trouble, is a great thing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, is there a process you have with the artwork? Is there anything you can show us today?
I wish I had prepared a little something. The only thing I can really do is show you a little bit of how I draw.
Perfect, yeah.
And I've prepared, it's 8 steps that let you draw a scene of great dramatic drama. Ooh. So if I can get into that, I'll grab the screen for a sec here.
Yeah.
All right. There we go.
All right, we are
How to draw a scene of great dramatic drama in only 8 steps. Now, anyone can draw this scene. All you'll need is a piece of paper and a writing implement. I find that a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper turned on its side will work really well for this. But I'm going to start right now with my piece of paper. And I'll try and move at a pace that everyone can follow along with. This is Photoshop, and I do most of my drawing in here. And this is actually what I made Mortimer Gulch, the New in Town book in. So, all right, I'm going to start you. This scene of great dramatic drama, we're going to have the repairman and Mortimer Gulch talking to one another. And I find the best place to start is with bodies. So I'm just going to draw a circle down here. That's going to be the repairman's head. And the repairman, he's got a body that's a circle as well. And I tend to not draw the full circle. I like to have one circle under the other. Find that reads better. Now Mortimer Gulch, he's got a pretty big head. It's more of an oval than a circle. Any shape, if you can get it close, that's good enough. This is nice and loose. There's no rules. It doesn't have to look exactly like what I've put together. Anything can happen, and that's the beauty of drawing. You go with what you have on the page. So here's the 2 bodies, all right? And now the next most important thing will be the eyes, nose, and ears. Now again, I use a circle. For noses, I like to draw the nose first. It helps me know where the eyes are going to go. And then I draw 2 circles for eyes. Now this is important. Don't put the dots in the eyes yet. We're going to save that for later. Now we're just going to concentrate on these simple shapes. Now, repairman's ears are sort of more half-circle shapes coming out of the side of his head like that. Now Mortimer Gulch has a different shape, eyes, nose, and ears. He's got a long, pointy nose. And he's got long, pointy ears. But he has eyes very similar to the repairman, so I just put 2 circle eyes right there. All right, that was step 2. Now on to step 3, which is legs and feet. I like to have my characters wearing pants. So these guys are going to have some pants with little cuffs at the bottom and little triangle feet sticking out of the bottom. Mr. Gulch has longer legs, but he wears equally fancy pants as well. So we're going to give him little cuffs at the bottom of his. And then I like to see just a little ankle on Mortimer Gulch. So we're just going to give him just a little ankle, and we're going to give him triangle feet. And here we go. We got some feet. Next, I find arms and hands would be helpful in this scene of dramatic drama. So the repairman will just be, he's got short arms. I tend to just do a short arm and a little hand. And we'll do that on the other side. And don't worry about how many fingers. It's just as long as there's some pointy things. The mind will read it as fingers. Now, we're going to draw the arms on Mortimer Gulch. He likes to fold his hands in front of himself. So we're going to do that. It's just these simple tubes. And then this one's a little tricky to get his hands looking like they're folding, but it's a shape like that. And then we make little tubes moving backwards to do the arm. And you can see Mr. Gulch is folding his arms in front of himself. Okay, the next most important ingredient to dramatic drama are the hats. Hats on these characters, very important. See, the repairman wears a hat it's got a little brim like that. And then I like to color it in. I like to give him a darker hat, and there's a little beanie on top. Mr. Gulch, he favors a bowler hat. So draw this little hat on top of him. And again, I like to color that in. Next most important, bow ties. If you want to have a dramatic scene, you generally need to have bow ties. So I put bow ties on both of these characters. And I also would like for them to be wearing vests. Vests, and we're going to make just a few lines and a few buttons for those. And I think what we need to do is also color in the repairman's vest. I like to have a dark vest on the repairman. Mortimer Gulch, I like to give him darker pants. In case he sits in anything, no one can tell what he sat in. And just color in his pants here. There we go. Now I also, this is if you have the time and you want to make your characters look very classy. I like to add a little plaid to my characters. And I make plaid like this. I just draw some lines going down and the lines going across. And then he's in a nice plaid vest. He's looking very good, very professional, very businesslike. The repairman, also very businesslike, likes to wear stripes on his pants. Okay, we have come to the very most important part of making a scene of great dramatic drama, and that is the expressions. That's why I saved them for last. Now, I want to start with the eyeballs, put them in the eyes, and I want my repairman and Mortimer Gulch to be looking at each other. It doesn't really, you don't have to do that. And I also like to have the repairman be happy. He's pretty chipper, you know. He's got a positive attitude, and maybe he's just telling Mr. Gulch something positive here, complimenting his vest. But Mr. Gulch, he's not a big fan of the repairman, so he's actually got like a very skeptical look. He's got a raised eyebrow here. Maybe he's got his lids down. So there's a scene of great dramatic drama. And I think we have a little more time, so I'm going to run you through a bonus here. This scene of dramatic drama, it's going to need something for them to be dramatic about. And I think I want to start with just a shape like this. So start drawing a rectangle. And this rectangle is going to have some bites out of it. And it's just sitting there, floating in between them. And now I want you to draw another rectangle on top of this one, and then another rectangle on top of that. And then you're going to use lines to make little rectangles inside of this big rectangle. There we go. And now we're going to add lines dividing up our rectangles. And then suddenly these start to look a bit more like bricks. So maybe what we're making is made out of bricks. And if we put a triangle on top of that, well, this is starting to look like a tower. Little line going up like that. So this is the clock tower. And you can't have a clock tower without a clock face and some windows. And you can see the drama in this scene it's almost overpowering. And I hope you've arrived at the same place, and I hope you're feeling very emotional right now. I'm going to hand things back to Drew. And if you can share these with me, however you want, perhaps on my social media or perhaps on the YouTube channel, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, so I am feeling the drama of the scene, and I love it. Like I said to you kind of before we started today, I am a terrible, terrible artist, but you broke it down into pretty easy to follow, easy to understand, easy to do steps, which, don't worry, I will still mess up.
Messing up's fine.
Exactly, and I feel like that's an important thing. Whenever you're trying any artistic endeavor, whether it's drawing or writing, there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. As someone who, no doubt your parents know, but you might not, it's okay. I'm old now.
Yeah.
While I have you for a couple of minutes, I was hoping I could just ask you some questions about writing a book and what that's like, if that's okay.
Sure.
Awesome. So my first question is this. What comes first for you? The drawing or the writing? Do you have a really cool image in your head and you go, how do I put a story around that? Or is it a story and then you go, how do I show that?
Well, the two are very tied together. I think it depends which comes first. You know, sometimes like a little bit of writing will pop into your head, a way to open up the story, a catchy little phrase, or maybe you'll just find fun names. Like the name Mortimer Gulch I'd had for a long time. It was just a fun name.
It's a great name.
For this particular book, I think it did start out as writing because I had started out as a much longer story. I'd asked my agent, "Hey, can I try and make a kid's book?" And he's like, "Sure." And I wrote this long story which would never be publishable as a kid's book. So that was about 12 years ago. And I spent the time in between. I've just been learning how to write a smaller story. So for me, the words first on Mortimer Gulch, and then like you had pointed out after the story, like a lot of the times you'll write words, and then when you go to do the drawings, you realize you don't need some of the words because the drawings can do all the heavy lifting. Like the words don't have to tell you what Mortimer Gulch looks like. I'm just going to be drawing him. So things get even simpler when you add in like the illustration and have the illustration pick up a lot of the visual slack. So yeah, that's pretty much how this book fell into place.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So then let me ask you this. What is some great advice that you could give to young writers, and what's some great advice that you could give to young artists?
Okay. All right. Well, it's probably the same kind of advice because both of those are creative endeavors. And I think the first thing that you need to understand is that the creative act in general, whether you're doing it in writing or you're doing it in sculpture or you're doing it in poetry or you're building a cabinet, it follows a lot of the same steps and you're going to pursue the same kind of instincts that you have. Basically, the first thing, if you want to get into any creative endeavor, be it writing or drawing, is you want to practice. You have to practice all the time. It takes a very long time to learn how to do something. And so you have to learn how to do it in the most fun way possible. So what I'd advise anyone who wants to write or draw to do is just draw the thing that you love to do. If you love drawing, horses and castles, then just draw that all the time as much as you want. And once you get better and better at drawing those, well, maybe there's something else you'd like to try and draw. Maybe you also like dogs a little, so you start drawing dogs. and you just build up a library of things that you know how to draw. And then if you keep drawing the way that I had just done, where you try and always think of your drawings in shapes and break things down into shapes, then once you get better at breaking things down into shapes, you'll find that some shapes you used to only be able to turn into a dog, now you know how to turn that into a horse or something like that. You just expand outward and learning how to draw and always trying to find a fun thing to do. And I think writing would work in a similar way. You write about what you know about, and you just try and string together a sentence that tells a story, and then maybe 2 sentences that tell a story. You always want to pursue telling a story. You can tell a story in 2 sentences. You can tell it in, 1,200 words, like a picture book. But you want to get a point across. You want to communicate something special to you.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, and I think that it makes good sense. Anything in life that you want to try and do, you don't just wake up and are good at it. You got to work at it. You got to practice. You got to learn.
Yeah.
So if you are like me and you are not the most artistically inclined person in the world, that's okay, because the other thing that's really cool about art is that ultimately only you know what the picture looked like in your head. Everyone else is just going to see what you draw, and they're going to like it regardless. So
Very true.
Don't let it mess with you.
Yeah.
I've got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
One, let's say that we have a young person who really, 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 really wants to write, and they've been writing. They've got a bunch of stuff. What are good next steps to getting your book published? How do you make that jump?
That's a hard one. I think the best way is you take what you've written and you want to show and turn into a book, and you just start finding people around you to read it and look at it and get their reactions to what it is you've written. You don't have to change it based on what they've told you. Mm-hmm. You just need to understand what people's reaction will be to what you've done, and whether you will like that, if the reactions that you're getting from them are the reactions you want. Yeah. And once you've started to show more people your work, then you have to try and seek out ways to get it in front of other people. Like maybe you post a story that you are really proud of on your website, and try and drive traffic to your website. You just want to try and get noticed, and make connections with people who do make books. That's another thing. If you try and find people who make books and reach out to them and just try and stay in contact with them, like, these are people who, when you make something that looks like, hey, this should be out in the world and be published, like, some of those people can help you or maybe pass you on to someone else. It's very important. Once you've made your piece of art, you can stay in a very small space and not show it to anyone to make it, but you can't get it published or made unless you start getting good at showing it to other people and being ready for their criticism, being ready for them to not like it, but hopefully being ready for them to like it. So that's the next step there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on something really, really great, which is working with other people. So you're pretty unique in that you do the writing and the drawing for your book. But a lot of people work with a person. So, for example, if you're listening and you're like, I love to draw, but writing, that's not something I like doing. Or, oh, I really love writing, but drawing, that's not something that makes me feel kind of stressed. You can find a friend, and you two can work together on this project also.
Yeah, you find someone who does it better than you. And I mean, most of my books I'm the only the illustrator. There's much better writers who I'm drawing for. And that's a good way to go, play to your strengths.
Well, let me ask you then. I said I only had one more question, but you gave me a great question right there. What is it like to work with someone? Do they send you the book and then you draw it and then you send it back and they say, oh, Mr. Gulch is green, not blue, so make him green? Or is it more collaborative? And what advice would you give for people who are working together on a project?
Okay. Well, different people work together in different ways. And then you also have the publisher who is helping both of you communicate to one another. So there's 3 of you involved, and you all want the same thing. You all want a really good book. But everyone has different levels of comfort in how much they want someone else to participate in their particular area of expertise. So as an illustrator, I personally don't mind when the author has, their own ideas and suggestions, but sometimes it's good for you to discover what's in your own head before you open yourself up to other people's suggestions. So, sometimes there's not a lot of communication with me and the author asking about what the author wants until I have some drawings to put in front of them. And a lot of times they're like, this is good. This is what I was picturing. Or sometimes they're like, hey, this is, better than what I was picturing. I want to go with that.
Awesome.
When I worked with Mac Barnett on the Terrible 2 series, we were in contact a lot and just able to easily talk to each other and cross those lines between writer and illustrator, and just find the best way to tell the story, whether, sometimes the illustration was handling it, sometimes the drawing was handling it. That's the way I like to work. I like to be in contact with the author, but some authors don't like that. So, that's.
All right. So then my last question is hopefully the funnest, and it for some people can be the hardest. There's no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely remember some books when I was a kid that inspired me and made me want to write. None of them inspired me enough to actually write, but they made me want to. What are some of the books that you remember from when you were a kid that really inspired you, whether it was to create New in Town or to become an artist? What were some of your books?
I was very much inspired by comics in the newspaper, Sunday comics in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. So Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes and Bloom County and Peanuts, like these were things that I saw, and I could see them every day. I could get a new comic strip every day in almost all those. And so I was drawing Garfields as a kid, and then, as I got older, I started trying to do more Calvin and Hobbes because that was much more complicated art. And, as the years went by, I found more and more artists as I got older and older. But the groundwork was cartoons for me and comics.
Awesome. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for spending part of your morning with us. I really appreciated it. I know that everyone who's watching now and everyone who continues to watch over the rest of the week will also appreciate it. Now, I have to shamelessly plug my bookstore, which I know is everyone's favorite part of these. But if you like New in Town and you're like, gee, I'd like to read that, you will be able to get a copy at Town Book Center. We're located in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. We are right across the street from the largest Wegmans in the country, I think. And if you don't feel comfortable coming out, if you're like, I don't want to leave my house, or, hey, you know what, I have a computer and I don't want to go outside, people can just bring things to me. We can bring books to you too. You can always order from us online at townbc.com. That's TOWN as in Nike, E as in Echo, B as in Bravo, C as in Charlie.com. And thanks again for watching. And thanks again, Kevin, for joining us.
Well, thanks, Drew, and thanks, Town Book Center.
All right. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.